if we look at the history, and you said it, it's like 6,000 years ago, about initiation were canceled. Initiation were canceled in a culture. And then what happened is that then when people stopped being initiated, then they were more than, they grew up older than 18 years old, but stayed in an adolescent way of being. And that's how just the culture grew. And mostly then has been taken over by the people who have no problem doing whatever they can, whatever is, going at the top, getting the power, the money, the fame, and doing that at any cost without compassion. Okay, so those people are mostly psychopath or have psychopathic behavior. So this is very clear that that's the culture that we have right now. And your president probably being, or the president of the United States, I won't say your president, the president of the United States being a great example for that.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's that, and it's like, for me to, I'm not interested to tackle that.
Yeah.
And it's Buckminster Fuller, and other people have said it. Okay, the real change happens when not you fight the old system, but you create the new. Put your energy in creating the new. The old system is already obsolete, is already irrelevant. It is gonna die. It is already dead. It's sort of like grasping with the last breath, before it drowns.
Yes.
And it's terrified of that. And okay, it's terrified. Okay, what I'm interested in is building the bridge, so when that fin collapses, people can move into more interesting game worlds.
I'm Dean Walker, and welcome to the Poetry of Predicament podcast, a podcast for people brave enough to face humanity's challenges and problems, and most importantly, our numerous predicaments. The Poetry of Predicament is a podcast meant to inspire us to bring forth grace, beauty, and connection with the web of life in the face of a predicament-laden world. How can we access truly new possibilities in these times of separation and collapse? Let's have a conversation with Anne-Chloé Destremau, a trainer of trainers for possibility management. All right. Welcome to another round of the Poetry of Predicament podcast. And once again, I find myself in the middle of a year-long month called April 2020. We've already been through the year-long month of March 2020, and we are in a different world. And this has been an easy beginning of 2020 for me to keep my word about really upping the gradient in the content and the guests in this podcast, for a number of reasons that I've been sharing little by little in various episodes. I've really found it essential to have these podcasts be an expression of what's up for me, what I'm finding valuable, what I'm finding worth getting out of bed in the morning for, in this most extraordinary time. And this particular episode is no exception. I'm just thrilled to be including more and more practitioners and designers of what I'm come to call advanced practices for this time. There's a entry level that seems very helpful for people, whether it's at the coronavirus level or prior to that, in the facing of human-caused collapse of Earth and human systems. The entry level is, the circling level, the deep adaptation facilitation level, the work that reconnects, which is bringing people together and giving them a safe space in which to feel and slow down for a moment together and hold space for each other. It's essential work and important in its own right. And for some people, that's enough. That's the level that they have in them to explore, and that's really where they'll begin, and perhaps where they'll stop their growth journey. And in these advanced practices, I'm wanting to speak with people who have considered that to be step one in a multiple mile long journey that is life at this time, that is cultivating extraordinary levels of aliveness and creativity, generativity in this time. So I've got Anne-Chloé Destremau, and Anne-Chloé has quickly become a senior trainer and trainer of trainers for possibility management around the world. And primarily my experience is y'all have it going on in Europe. That's really the locus for most of the work. A lot in Germany and Spain, and I don't know where else you guys play, but it's always pretty great. But I know that I've spoken with some folks in Australia. There's a small handful of us here who are interested in the USA, and I just got to yesterday participate in a 4-part series of online events. No surprise that the folks in possibility management are stepping into doing online events. It's really the only way to get people together for whatever is being the point of a gathering. And this particular class is called Rage Club. I love how provocative it is. It's typical for me to see a title like that in the possibility management website, to be able to see, what the heck is that? That sounds great. Whatever it is, sign me up. And yes, it is great as a series. It was great yesterday. I felt so wonderful to be able to reconnect with people that I had met in other earlier workshops, primarily in 2019. So first, Anne-Chloé, thank you for your patience while I talk all this time. I just have a little bit more, and then I'd love to just cut you loose. I want to speak a little bit about how, for me personally, these are really important interviews, and I'm hoping that you, the viewers of these interviews, find them also very, very valuable, because we're really down to it now. It's different now than it's been for the past 8 years that I've been really immersed in writing books and creating work to support people who are very, very collapse aware. Now there's a lot more people who really get we are in the collapse of Earth and human systems. It's not about a virus. It's about the collapse of Earth and human systems that we're causing. Mm-hmm. And my question in general for these years has been, if not that business as usual ecocidal system, omnicidal system, then what? And given that most of my lifetime of personal practices and my work has been involved with transformational training of one kind or another, I've known that you just don't get into that advanced training level without doing the work. It's not something that you can fake. It's not something that you can pay enough money to buy the certificate to put on your wall. There's just not a way except to actually do the work. And while it can be excruciating and it can be more uncomfortable and sometimes even painful than it's easy for me to describe here, I also can say that it has saved my life and then blossomed my life into new levels that I never could have dreamt. And now is the opportunity, literally on a global scale, in this pause. I was just telling Anne-Chloé, I've come to really like the term, we are the people of the pause. And I don't mean that for most of the population of the world, because most of the population of the world is staged and begging for, let's get back to business as usual as quickly as we can. That's the desire, and that's what the government and the corporations want to gaslight us into believing, like forgetting that all this even happened and move forward with this tsunami of getting back to the way it was.
Mm-hmm.
So the question was, if not that is clearly going to take us into the sixth mass extinction, behind all the smoke and mirrors of the virus, then what? And it's with possibility management and my now numerous conversations with Anne-Chloé, with Clinton, with a number of other practitioners, and with a number of other similar level bodies of work. These are the conversations that I consider worth having now.
Mm.
These are the conversations that start to answer the question, that Einstein quote about we can't solve the problems that we've created using the same level of thinking that was used to create them. This is the level of work that it takes to truly access new ways of being, new ways of thinking, new possibilities. And this is the tough work. And this is the miraculously brilliant work of people of the pause. So Anne-Chloé, again, thank you for your patience. Welcome here. And I'm wondering if anything that I've said sparks you to share anything.
Yeah, absolutely. I really want to thank you for like putting this in such like clear words. I think it takes really years of research and like sort of battled with our current, or like battle with the culture we were born in to have so much clarity about it. Mm. And I think this is really one thing that triggers something in me. And when you say, if not the life that was before the corona, then what? And then it comes to, okay, I don't live a business as usual life. I live a different life. I live a life in next culture. And so your question comes as, okay, how is it to be there? How is it to live there? And then I have to look at my life and sort of give you a tour of what it's like. But first I want to, I think it starts, and even if you were talking with advanced practice, I consider this a really advanced practice to have the awareness of cultural relativity. And most of us born in modern culture, we have no idea that we were born in a culture. We think we were born in the world. We think we were born in civilization. That is how human beings are supposed to live and evolve, and we are the progressed one, and we are the civilized one, and we are the cultivated one. And it is impossible to even think that another culture is possible. And for me, it's not like the progression of modern culture. We're talking about in a different context. So in a way, I mean, I know that probably other people have said this on your show, but even we can look at indigenous culture, and even those people in modern culture would look at those as, oh, they haven't evolved into what we are. They haven't evolved and the indigenous people look at us and they see absolutely where we are, and they think where we are is crazy. And this is sort of a side note, but it was a really good friend of mine doing possibility management who gave me a sense of what racism is. And her definition of racism is, like, for example, a white person being, racist would be that we think we see them, we think we see other people, but we don't even imagine that they can see us back. So we can give feedback, we can define what they are, but we cannot even imagine that somebody else can look at us back and give us feedback about how we are, how we behave.
Right.
So it has really nothing to do with the color of our skin. It is an awareness, and that's the cultural relativity awareness. But I
Yeah.
think it really starts there to look at our life and be okay. I'm choosing to be here, and this is one possibility. This is only one possibility out of a lot,
Mm-hmm.
out of not an infinite, but a lot. And to start there is sort of to start where we are, and to great. And I think this is also the work of, permaculture or deep adaptation or coming in circle is a different possibility, is already a different possibility. And I would encourage as many people here listening to experience that possibility of meeting in circle, because it breaks down, it collapses this idea of hierarchy, which the modern culture, capitalist patriarchal empire is based on. And when we're in a circle, then there's no beginning and there's no end and there's no authority figure. And so it's that change of experience can change the way we look at the world, the way which we would call our thoughtware. We call that the thoughtware, the way what we used to think with, how it is our filter to interact with the world. Okay, if you were born in modern culture and you've been to school and you have a job and you have a filter called hierarchy, and it's like you think the world works with authority figure who will tell you how it goes, or you might be the authority figure that tells other people how it goes, and then this is it. Somebody has to say how it goes and the other people follow. Okay, we're in this master sheeple situation, which is, we see it, it's so clear now. It is so clear now. I mean, one way it is so clear is that, for me, I mean, it's so clear how it is an illusion. It's so clear how having an authority is an illusion, because right now we're in the middle of a major liquid state of the culture of, modern culture. It's mostly a liquid state of modern culture. Also, Earth is going through a liquid state just because we've been really destroying it and killing it. But so we're going through this liquid state of modern culture, which shakes the ground of it, shakes the foundation. And actually those foundation are illusion. So the foundation of modern culture, we're talking about money as a value. Money has value. Okay, that is one foundation of modern culture. Okay, hierarchy is another foundation, like construct of this culture. Democracy is a is a foundation of this of the construct of modern culture. The economy, that there is such a thing called the economy, it's an illusion.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're seeing it when I read in the paper that Trump is pulling out $220 trillion for a rescue plan or something in that order. And it's like, where do they come from? It's the insanity of that piece of paper means nothing. If you can print it that much, that piece of paper has no value. So
can I just pause you for a second, because you brought up a term that I use a lot in speaking with a number of different guests out of this context completely. I use the term liquid state quite a bit, so I don't think it's going to be a total surprise for people to hear those words, but I'd like to just put a little bit more context on it, both individually and
Yeah.
then collectively, and then ask you to continue whatever your thread is here.
Great. Thank
Because the dynamic that I think I've heard, I know that I've heard you describe, and I know it's very similar to my perception in myself and in so many of the people I work with, that there's this literally a terror that's inside of ourselves that we do our best to try and find a word for it out there, but usually it's just something like the terror of being unemployed, or the terror of having a divorce, or the terror of losing my health, or whatever it is, those typical big stressors
you. Yeah.
that each of them by their nature cause or trigger us into an uncertainty. We no longer can rely on a the repetitive daily nature of life. It's different. It's shaken, or it's actually liquefied. What was
Hmm.
once solid was solid just a moment ago is now liquefied.
Yeah.
And what I believe you're pointing at is our individual ability and our collective ability as an aspiration. We aspire, if if we were really on track here, we would be aspiring to be familiar with that liquid state, and not just familiar, but actually know it to be something really good to lean into
Hmm.
rather than repel back from.
Hmm.
So I'm saying it in this way because that is such an early distinction delivered in all possibility management work. You know, the expand the box is the initial weekend workshop that kind of gets a person going.
Yeah.
It's in there. It's shifting the frame. Like, what if this thing that you're absolutely been taught to fear the most
Mm.
is actually an attractive and extraordinarily valuable state to approach or lean into?
Hmm.
So it's one thing to learn it on an individual level and yahoo. I mean, that's great, and keep going, folks. But what I also hear you talking about is here's the opportunity of this pause is we could conceivably lean into this liquid state that is now not just collectively for humanity, but also for the planet. So thanks for sitting through all that. I wanted to just put it into a context so people who might not know quite about possibility management, how does it fit on the individual level? How does it fit on the collective level? And I interrupted you. So if you can, pick up that thread and go wherever you'd like.
Yeah, I'll just pick up where you left. I mean, what you were saying, I think it's the liquid state is that is right. It's this. We had a solid vision of who we were, of what was going on, of how life, those are my friends, and I'll have this career, and I'll have a retirement plan. And so this is also at a very individual level, but also at a collective, there will be a pension, there will be there will be medical assistance, all that stuff. And happens something happens that so either something happens voluntarily, meaning that you put yourself in a situation where you're going to get feedback, or you're going to get a possibility that you didn't see before, and that will create the liquid state.
Mm-hmm.
So this is what happens in the training, that we build a safe space, a contained space, where there's enough sort of pressure for the solidity to liquefy. Okay, so it's it's in a held space, and there's space holders for that. Right now, as you say, the whole culture is going in liquid state, and uh, there's not really any safe container, and people are not being told this is a liquid state. And liquid state, yeah, it really feels like dying. It feels like everything that you knew is going to disappear, and therefore you are going to disappear.
Mm.
And that would trigger this huge fear that you were talking about, that's directed on the outside, but if we really go into it, it's a fear. And really, you can sort of even do it now as I speak, is like, what is this really about? What is this often is the fear of being alone, and then the fear of dying, ultimately the fear of being alone and the fear of dying.
Yeah.
And so, you know, this when you say it is a state that after some years of work, we like there's an experience of leaning into it has so much benefit, because it's like it's the phoenix process. It's the death and resurrection. Okay, I burn what was there, and then I come out as a newborn, and my life is totally different. And I think this is true when there's a certain it's like the liquid state is valuable or is wanted for people who what I would call adult, what people who would call initiated. And one thing is to be initiated into fear. And we have not been initiated into the feeling of fear is the feeling of fear. And that's it. It's a neutral source of information and energy. And for now, like what's the way it's been wired in modern culture is fear is bad. Fear should be avoided. Fear means something really bad is going to happen. You might die. Fear is, or you might be, if you feel fear, is that you're weak, or you're, you know, you, it's for girls. Girls are feeling fear, but not men, not real men. And so there's this, yeah, it's, there's a real initiation to go to be able to feel the fear, lean into it, and lean into this liquid state. And it's this no man's land. Okay, I don't know what's going to happen. Yeah. It's the not knowing space. Yeah.
If you don't mind me interrupting again, you've just brought up another word that just I would love to pull that thread for just a moment. The whole notion of being initiated. I've been more than 20 years involved with an initiation program for men called the New Warriors program, or the Mankind Project, and that's a worldwide program. It's pretty darn good. I would call it an entry level program, but it's a strong one, and they promote men getting in circles and being empowered with a number of distinctions that are extraordinarily helpful. And I know that their intention with this initiation is to have these men become men, be initiated into manhood or adulthood. And they do a decent job of that. And I'm at the elder level of that program, and I can say that they do a decent job of distinguishing being initiated into elderhood as well. Yeah. And I know that there are some comparable women's programs as well. But when we're really talking about the numbers, even though they're substantial, they're the biggest programs I'm aware of on the planet, thousands and thousands of people, the numbers are extraordinarily low. And when we just put that aside for a moment and we look at the culture at large, you know, particularly in the USA, where we are so obviously uninitiated, we are so obviously clamped into an adolescent state that is so self-absorbed that it's literally disconnected from all the primary sources of meaning in a human life. Is, you know, collectively, that's how we're doing it. So I find it powerful that you're using the word initiation. I know you're using it intentionally. I know that for the person coming into a expand the box weekend they're gonna start to get the idea, the seed will be planted, that what's possible here is a person could continue with the work, do this work, and step into that level of initiation that you're talking about. And I just want to underscore it, and that, you know, true initiation in the history of humanity, where it's been a serious practice in a culture, oftentimes it's not fucking around. It is the person going through initiation, there's something at stake. Life is at stake, and truly, a young person could go out and not survive or come back injured. There is something at stake, and at the very least, what's at stake is that way that my adolescence has sort of cobbled together to be in life. Suddenly, that needs to be gently integrated in a new way, and then opened up to a whole nother possibility called true adulthood. And you just, what I'm also hearing when you mention that word is that we do not have the safe kind of container that you were just describing in the workshop experience. On a global level, there are those who are saying, well, this is a time of human initiation to a new level of consciousness. Well, that's a swell idea, but there is no container for it, and there's no shared context for it.
Mm-hmm.
And there's apparently not anywhere near a critical mass of even interest in it. It's still the liquid state. It still has all the fear and everything that we've been trained to stay away from our whole lives. And so it feels like I'm landing this in a way that's kind of a bummer. I meant to, I meant to emphasize my
Yeah.
very real appreciation for possibility management in making it such a clear opportunity at the individual level to create an initiation for oneself or one's family or whatever. That it becomes very much within reach. And I guess what I was also pointing at is that does not look like in any real fashion what's going on the global scale.
Yeah.
So, as confused as that message might have been, I'm wondering if you're sparked to say anything after that.
Yes. So first of all, I would just want to say, just interrupt me kind of whenever, because I could speak for 5 days. If you have me 5 days, I could just keep speaking.
Okay.
And so one of the thing I just want to say is that I sometimes I go into this consideration about the collective, about humanity at large, or it's not about humanity at large really, it's about people in modern culture, because indigenous initiation still exists and are being young people still go through indigenous initiation. So we're talking about the culture that have exterminated initiation and live in a state of adolescence really, or even childhood and adolescence. And when I start looking at this global level, I think I kind of get to this point of how are we going to make this happen? How are we going to initiate billions? We're talking about billions of people that initiation has been taken away from them. And somehow I lose grip of my work. And that's why I focus on individual and groups of people, 20 people, 30 people, different teams
Yeah.
connecting, and I really, that's where I'm putting my energy and my attention. And so the other thing that I really really touched me, I think, is if we look at the history, and you said it, it's like 6,000 years ago, about initiation were canceled. Initiation were canceled in a culture. And then what happened is that then when people stopped being initiated, then they were more than, they grew up older than 18 years old, but stayed in an adolescent way of being. And that's how just the culture grew. And mostly then has been taken over by the people who have no problem doing whatever they can, whatever is, going at the top, getting the power, the money, the fame, and doing that at any cost without compassion. Okay, so those people are mostly psychopath or have psychopathic behavior. So this is very clear that that's the culture that we have right now. You know, and your president probably being, or the president of the United States, I won't say your president, the president of the United States being a great example for that.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's that, and it's like for me to, I'm not interested to tackle that.
Yeah.
And it's Buckminster Fuller, and other people have said it. Okay, the real change happens when not you fight the old system, but you create the new. Put your energy in creating the new. The old system is already obsolete, is already irrelevant. It is gonna die. It is already dead. It's sort of like grasping with the last breath, you know, before it drowns.
Yes.
And it's terrified of that. And okay, it's terrified. Okay, what I'm interested in is building the bridge. So when that fin collapses, people can move into more interesting game worlds, more interesting cultures. We would call next culture. Mm-hmm. And I say it as next cultures with an S because the vision is to have 100 million nanonation, 100 million nanonation around the world with their own culture. However, the communality, like what would bind us, or what would emerge from a similar context, is that initiation would be at the center of it. Mm. Right now, what's at the center of modern culture is money and power. This is what's at the center. This is what we want. This is the American dream. You know, this is, okay. What does it look like to have a culture which is at the center? We have transformation, evolution, initiation, love, possibility, clarity. Mm-hmm. You know, what does it look like? And I think there's not one answer. So I can sort of tell you what my mind looked like. I live in a nanonation called Possibilica. Okay, there's about 7 people in it. We are all possibility management trainers from the Trainer Guild of Possibility Management. And one of our culture is to come in circles and to do research together, and also to commit to each other's stand in radical responsibility. This means each and every one of us take radical responsibility for what the culture is. And that means there's nobody else to blame. If there's a conflict and it's not even me, I didn't even start it. There's a conflict, I didn't even, okay, I'm radically responsible because I'm aware of the conflict. And I have the tools to deal with it, to handle it, to talk about it, to put it on the table. So we keep inventing tools. I mean, I'll tell you one example. So another community of radical responsibility that I'm part of is the Trainer Taurus, the Trainer Taurus of Possibility Management. And we've been in liquid state, like you were saying, there's personal liquid state, and there can be also game world liquid state. So we've been in liquid state for the past 2 years because Clinton Callahan, who started this circle of trainer, decided to not be the main space holder, but to join the circle, which is probably the only game world that I know that the creator said, I'm not going to be the main space holder for the game world, I'm moving into the circle. You know, Marshall Rosenberg didn't do that in nonviolent communication, and whatever. This is just one example that I know, but I know also other game worlds. Okay, and then so the whole group had to figure out, okay, how are we going to do this? And we didn't know. There's no map. There's no map right now for radical responsibility of a circle, how it goes. And so it's been 2 years, and then in January we meet, and there was emotion. So there was triggers, and there was hooks, and there was miscommunication, and that happened in the Trainer Guild. we created this process called the flying walk. The flying walk, where we sit in a circle, and then there's a circle in the middle, and then anybody who has a conflict or question or something that's unresolved, go in the circle and say, I want to talk to you, and I want to talk to you. One person in the circle say, you two, you have to talk. And you can have up to 6 people in it. And it was, so I was in the walk for one session, and it was such a healing process to have a space like this with people who are initiated into adulthood, who can take responsibility. Okay, this is my emotion and this is yours. Okay, this is my story and this is yours. And how do we work it out? And we don't have to agree on everything. It's not about agreeing. It's about negotiating. It's about negotiating the village we want to live in. So this is a glimpse into, the world that I live. And it's a circular world. It's a circular world. Yeah.
Your timing was perfect. I just had a huge amount of noise going on during your entire last segment. So perfect timing. And I've got to tell you, I don't, this is the first time I've heard about this particular process that you're describing. And I've been really hungry for that. I've been a facilitator, a mediator, and so on for a long time, and I'm always in search of ways of building the container or holding the space or methods of having people be able to be closer with one another, one way or another.
Can I interrupt you?
Yeah.
Hold on to the idea that the next thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Good. I was really thinking about, okay, what my culture looks like, and it's one of the next culture, and it really feels, for most people, it feels like moving to the forest tribe of northern Thailand. Okay. You don't understand the language. You don't understand why kids are not in school and actually running around and actually learning from one another, from generation to generation, and not in a school class with a teacher in front. Okay, you don't understand why they would eat this at this time of the day or this time of the year. And people who are, because we nomads, either we move into people's home, so you haven't had that pleasure yet, but we might come and move into your home, or we have people come in and live with us, and building a culture has so many dimensions and layers and pieces of thoughtware. And so I'm talking about, relationship, negotiating intimacy. Okay, well, there's something called expectation that leads to resentment. How do you take down resentment? Okay, how do you negotiate if you have a thought where I'm not allowed to have a voice as a woman with a man? Okay, you have to heal that part of the patriarchy before you can have this conversation. And then we can talk about, like, the game world. How do we negotiate so that a circle of people can understand each other even if they come from different places? And so there's initiation into emotion, there's initiation into jacking into archetypal lineage, into other forces of nature, Gaia, our bright principles. So I know I'm saying a lot of words that are not in the usual vocabulary or in the dictionary of English modern culture, but I just want to say, because it's like so fun for me to think how many layers in a culture there is, and how much play space. There's so much play space when you open the door of possibility, that something else is possible right now. Something completely different from this is possible right now. Okay, then you're in no man's land. You have the fear coming up, so initiate yourself in fear, and then you can be in the creation process. But yeah, I wanted to say that.
All right, great. Yeah. To me, that just fits beautifully into that notion that we are the people of the pause. What the pause is really inviting us all to. And I think without even knowing it, a number of people, because of this shelter at home order that's in many cities, that and because there are a certain number of people that are privileged enough to not have to be freaking out in the middle of not having a job and no money and oh my God, and because there are plenty of people who are at the freak out level and don't have any idea how they're going to survive this thing.
Mm-hmm.
But for the people who have that privilege, who have that buffer, who can be somewhat present in this time, they're opening up to, they're kind of loosening up to, well, what would happen if we spent our day this way? What would happen if I started to really explore this piece of personal development that I've wanted to do? What if I started poetry? What if I were to write some poetry, and so on?
Yeah.
So I'm seeing a little bit more malleability, a little bit more willingness and softening into the possibility that there are other ways of being, at least in the first few levels in some of the population, maybe just here in the States. I imagine it might be a little bit easier in some of the European environments. I don't know.
Well, so I come from a place that is radically different. So what I might say will sound probably radical.
Mm-hmm.
But any freak out can come from anything. Anybody can freak out about anything.
Sure.
And so if you think your circumstances make you freak out, then you're actually not taking responsibility for what is really going on. What is really the story that you say that makes you freak out? And I know that I say that to I don't know who's listening, but it could be a single mother with 3 children who just lost her job, and it's like, okay, how can I have space in me to take responsibility and be okay? I decided to be there, and it's an offer.
Mm-hmm.
It's a radical offer to just be there and say, okay, I decided to freak out, or I decided not to freak out, and it's a decision, and to check out where it comes from. And I also wanted to say, and that could be an experiment that I would really offer your people,
Mm-hmm.
is that we've noticed that really wonderful people around me who are doing this work, and for long time or short time, they are stuck at the level of permission. They're stuck at the level of, I don't have permission to do something else. And they might not be aware of it, but after talking to a few people, we realized that, yeah, they were like, okay, I'm not allowed to do this. And then so the experiment is to check, okay, who do you need permission from? Who do you need permission from? And it doesn't matter who it is. So it might be, okay, I need my permission from my dad to not go to university because he wanted me to go to university, but I don't want, and I need permission to not do this. Okay, I need permission from the government to stop paying taxes. Okay, because actually I don't want to finance a government that's financing corporation and the war and military and on and on and on. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay, so check in yourself. Okay, who do you need permission to try something else? And then ask them. So you can sort of click your clicker and have your father, whether they're dead or not dead, click and they appear in front of you. You kind of imagine them in front of you, and you have a conversation with them, and you say, can I have your permission? And most often those people have said yes. In all our experiment, those people have said yes. And then there's a whole relief in us about, okay, I have permission now. Okay, it's in my hand, I have permission.
Mhm.
And and then that's the next step, but it's about taking our authority back. It's about authority and about who has authority about over our life.
Yeah.
And it's like thinking that a government as authority over our life is in a way ridiculous. You know, it really, if to go into it, a
Mhm.
government is an illusion. Okay, how can I give my authority away to an illusion that I
Yeah.
didn't consciously build, and it's not aligned with my values or what's important for me?
Yeah. You
Yeah.
mentioned yet another word that I just would like to put a little bit more um, flesh on the bones of,
Yeah.
and that is experiment.
Mm.
A few minutes ago, you mentioned about the distinction of how important it is for people for whom it's new to sit in circle with others,
Yeah.
to get an experience of something that is not hierarchical. It's not domination or control based. It as we might have experienced in school and so on. That there's an entirely different dynamic possible in a circle environment,
Mhm.
and similar to that understanding and that experience of being in a safe circle. Um, there's a way that y'all have made uh, the notion of trying an experiment, which is very different than being told what I should do by the next person who's my guru or teacher or the person who's leading the seminar or whatever.
Mhm.
There's this way that you all seamlessly weave into the process of learning and experiencing possibility management, where something is noticed in the space, or something is shared, or something is observed, and then sometimes an experiment is suggested. So,
Mhm.
what would happen if you were to experiment? So, rather than being told you need to be radically responsible, there I am feeling small and I don't know what the fuck to do. How do I do that?
Yeah.
There's this experiment, which is a space of possibility in which I feel like I have co-experimenters or people who are willing to support that experiment going on and are encouraging it to go on.
Mhm.
It's a very different environment. So I know it seemed like a small point, but I have found so much freedom in that methodology of that. Are you willing to try an experiment? I'd like to offer what I'm seeing. Whole different uh, track to go on than you need to do it this way in order to hit nirvana or get to the next level or whatever it is. So
Yeah.
thank you for bringing that in.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for putting it like that, because it's really when, so I bring a lot of circles together. I bring a lot of circles together, and when people come, they might have a tendency to try to give their, what we say, the authority or their center, their responsibility away to me. And um, the feedback that I got really for the especially the online Zoom meeting. I was gonna, Zoom is my second name at the moment.
Yeah, you and me both.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Um, uh, is that people are so appreciative of the space that I hold or that is held, um, because it is an experiment place.
Mm.
Because and it's not, nothing is mandatory, and it really, that's how possibility management is still evolving. We're still discovering new ways, new possibility, because okay, there's no one way to go. There is no one way to go, and it's sort of anybody who comes into the context bring their own question and their own consideration, and it's like, hey, I tried this and it worked great, let's put it into the game world. Yeah. And somehow, I mean, I just want to say sort of my background, so people can also relate to the journey, because I was born in Paris, and I was a professional swimmer for 10 years. And it was very much, this is how it goes. I grew up, my dad is in the military, and I was a lawyer. I went to Columbia Law School and La Sorbonne University in Paris. So you can imagine the box that I really grew up in. And really one day I come into work into the law office, the law firm. I forget my words. And I walk in the first day, and I was so proud. And it was like, I have my desk and I have my computer, and I have, and I feel so powerful. And it's this like false ecstasy of modern culture, like feeling I made it. The second day I come in, and I have this sense, I need to quit this job. This cannot be my life. And 3 months after that, the first experiment, really conscious, more or less conscious, was I bought a plane ticket, fly to New Zealand. And that's when my journey of experimenting has started and has not stopped yet.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, and Chloe, I'm curious. I'm tempted to go in a particular direction as we're sort of winding up this conversation. Mm-hmm. And like every other segment of the conversation, we don't have to go there. It's just where my preference is in this moment. So let me just run it by you, and then perhaps you have a different direction you'd like to finish up with. I'm curious how life is for you here and now. Mm-hmm. Being someone who clearly is deeply engaged with advanced practices, the generation of entirely new possibilities and new ways of being, at a time when our collective inability to live in a wholesome way on this planet, but our inability to generate any new possibilities collectively at the moment seems to be killing us. Mm-hmm. So you have this extraordinary experience, and you're in it every day, and yet you're very aware, obviously, of the state of the world. And I'm curious if there's anything you would like to share about how life is for you now, in what you do, in what you've created, in where you're headed. Anything you'd like to share with us, just in a way of sharing.
Yeah, I mean, yes, thank you. My life is wonderful. I think my life right now is, I think you said that, and this is the most alive I've felt, and the most ecstatic. And so there's joy in there, but there's also a lot of anger that helps me move through. There's a lot of fear about being in the unknown, and a lot of sadness of connection, and also sadness for the world and grief for the world. And I go through all those feeling in an ecstasy because I can allow myself to feel. And it is such a gift to be able to feel consciously. And I mean, the other part is, my life is so wonderful because I am surrounded by people who are so courageous, really, that are so brave. Like just give an example, but it was really an example of bravery. Is that this young woman, she's younger than me, and she decided for 1 week, every time that she would have an emotion come, she would go through this healing process. In a week, she must have been going through between 20 and 25 healing processes to come out on the other side, to be a different person, to be able to be in service of others. It's like, it's such, who has friends like that? I hope you have friends like this. Yeah. And I, I think a lot of people, as a guest, there are a lot of people who are listening to your podcast and who are in your circles are geniuses. They're geniuses because they were born like that. It's not a compliment, or it's just kind of, they were born like that, of a level of awareness that's higher than ordinary. And really, to entertain geniuses, there's some work involved in that. So it has to be full of experiment and new distinction and new territory to explore. And so for me to surround myself around geniuses, my life is so interesting because they have so much necessity, and I have to keep building into that necessity. And anyway, so it's an opinion, but I don't think there's any better way to live, to build bridges into other people's necessity. And I think you know what I'm talking about. So yeah, that's a little check-in into my life.
Yeah. I'm curious, is there any, I often ask folks who come on this podcast to wrap up in this way. And maybe you've already been doing that. Maybe that's all you've been doing in this entire conversation. But I'm curious, is there any last offering that you might have for someone who's just beginning, who's just starting to open their eyes to not only what's actually going on the planet, but that there is this tiny crack that they can see, that it doesn't have to be this way. It's brand new to them. I'm curious if you would have any words to share with someone who's kind of at that new place.
Yeah, I want to say it is scary as hell. If you're scared, you're in the appropriate state of where you should be. So it is appropriate, and you might feel some reaction to what Dean was saying, to what I was saying, and don't let that stop you because our conversation was pretty radical. And so one offer that I have is, it's coming from my work. We're building, with Clinton Callahan, we're building this massively multiplayer start over game that is about personal transformation. And there's 330 doorways to get into that game. And so if you would post the link under this interview, and people can click on it, and then you can scroll down, it's in alphabetical order, and there's no right way to start, okay? The offer is, start what turns you on. Start where things turns you on. When you have a question, God, this sounds interesting. This sounds, I want to dive into this. I have a question about this. And people have started to play the game, and they say they have like 30 tabs open in their internet window. And because that's how the game is built, that there's links inside, and you move from one website to the next. And you just follow your own interest and your own necessity. And so it is, and it's an experimental, it's based on experiment. There's a lot of offers of experiment. So it's a great place to start. Right.
And yes, I'll definitely put all the necessary links in the show notes for this particular conversation. And Chloe, I got to tell you, it's just been so rich to meet you, to get to know you in the times last year. And every time we get another chance to be in a conversation like this, I consider you an absolute sister in the people of the pause, and just a brilliant creator in your own right. And so thank you so much for taking this time, spending even more time on Zoom.
No, can I say something?
Oh,
I
yeah.
yeah, thank you. Really thank you for building bridges at every different level.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's the same. I feel really a brother and connected, and we in different continent, but there's this being to being, heart to heart, and purpose to purpose connection that I feel really glad about. And it's
Yeah.
like we're not alone. You're not alone out there. People listening, you're not alone. Yeah.
Hmm.
So thank you, Dee. Thank you a lot.
All right. Well, give my regards to Mr. Callahan.
Will do. Will do.
All right. Thanks for watching another episode of the Poetry of Predicament podcast, produced by Dean Walker and the Living Resilience Alliance, www.livingresilience.net. Music today from Michael Hedges, as always, and also Port Blue Into the Sea. Also available on our website, www.livingresilience.net, is a wide array of articles, online learning series, arranging group and individual resilience coaching, and sign up for our now weekly support gatherings online that we call Safe Circle